Greetings everyone, my name is Sai, and I fucking love Shadow of the Colossus. It's my second favorite game of all time, just below Portal 2, and is damn near perfect on both the gameplay and story fronts. And not only was it a technical marvel at the time, but the PS3 remaster is absolutely gorgeous. If you haven't played it by now, I must question just what it is you think you're doing with your life. Regardless, I've been in a Colossus-y sort of mood lately, and I'm currently working on a 10T YDK for the game. But those take a bit to make, as you know, so in the meantime I've decided to do a video on the top 5 best and top 5 worst boss fights in the game. We're going to jump straight into it so as not to waste any time. So without any further ado, here are the top 5 best and worst Colossi in Shadow of the Colossus. So, I adore aggro like most people seem to, but the fights where she's required to win vary wildly in quality, and on the lower levels of that, we have Colossi like 10. Colossus number 10, Durge, is one of those fights with a lot of potential, made aggravating by lackluster gameplay mechanics. So to beat Durge, you have to ride aggro around while he chases you, turn around and shoot him in the eye to make him crash into a wall. Now that'd be tricky enough by itself, but it's made infinitely worse by the shitty targeting reticule that won't hold still. Oh, and did I mention all the giant sand columns that litter the room, and that you will run into constantly because you can't see where the fuck you're going? Don't misunderstand here. I adore the concept of the fight, because there's almost a horror element to it, but that potential is lost after 15 minutes of retrying because the targeting reticle wouldn't hold still, and aggro wouldn't stop running headfirst into walls. And the number 5 spot on the good side goes to the original, the big, the bad, Colossus number 1, Malus. If you're playing Shadow of the Colossus for the first time, the moment Malus walks onto screen, your jaw can't help but drop. Even gamers of today haven't really played anything that gives such a great sense of scale and magnitude. But while he certainly was an incredible pick for the first boss fight, you could hypothetically put any of the bigger Colossi in his place and get the same effect. He's only really memorable because he was the very first Colossus you fight. So while Malus is certainly worthy of a mention, he's nowhere near the best Colossi in my mind. Regardless, I can't deny the magic of the fight, and he remains a fantastic introduction to the game. You know, contrary to popular opinion, I actually really like Colossus number 11, Celosia. Contrast is important in a game, and if all you fought in the entire game was really big stuff, then the spectacle will eventually wear thin. So even if the boss fight's kinda shitty, I at least appreciate the intention to provide Celosia as a juxtaposition of some of the cooler boss fights in the game. Cenobia, on the other hand, has no such excuses. Coming just after 13 of all Colossi, Cenobia is a noticeable step down in quality, which is disappointing when the game is soon nearing its conclusion. That's the point when you want things to get bigger and better, and here we have another runty, quote-unquote, Colossus, who's basically a carbon copy of Celosia. To the point, actually, that if you weren't looking at them side by side, you'd be forgiven for just assuming they reuse the same model a second time. And it sucks because it's not even really a bad fight. I enjoy using the environment to fight Cenobia way more than I enjoyed Celosia's aggravating fire puzzle. But after coming hot off the heels of 13's fight, nearing the end of the game, as well as feeling virtually identical to Celosia's fight, Cenobia felt like a huge step back. And at number 4 back on the good side, we have the final boss of the game, Malus. The most aggressive Colossus by far and away, Malus certainly does bear a great bit of malice towards you. Nah, I apologize. Anyways, I love this boss fight for the sense of dread you get while fighting it. I mean, your best friend in the entire world just died as far as you know, and the only thing standing between you and a reunion with your one true love is this giant prick over there firing laser beams at you. I also really admire how colossal this Colossus feels. After fighting 15 other Colossi by this point, sheer size had long since stopped being intimidating, but since he's not only the second tallest Colossus, but also firing lasers that can stun-lock you to death, he is a genuinely frightening foe to face. Now, there are only 2 real problems with this fight. One, if you fall off, and you will fall off, it'll take you a good few hours to get back up. And 2, having to shoot a weak point on his shoulder is really counterintuitive. Because, you know, when I'm climbing a giant and having flashbacks of having to make that awful climb again, my first instinct is to look around for a hidden weak point with my sword while standing still like a derp. Did I mention how much swimming absolutely sucks in Shadow of the Colossus? Because it does. It sucks a lot. So it follows then that a Colossus that revolves around swimming, like Hydrus, would also suck, and you'd be right on the money with that assumption. And not only is this fight aggravating because of the swimming, it's also really easy to get killed during it, because his electricity barbs do insane amounts of damage, and the timing to stop them is really tricky to get down. And, for the sake of argument, let's say you didn't know save shrines were a thing, like I didn't on my first playthrough. Imagine dying 3 times to this boss and having to run all the way back from the Shrine of Worship each fucking time. And now you're starting to see why I wish that Hydrus got flushed down the toilet during development. If there were ever a fight that perfectly summarized Shadow of the Colossus as a whole, it'd be the fight with the third Colossus, Gaius. His pure size is frightening enough, but the giant stone column he's repurposed as a sword is terrifying to a new player, with each swing sending shockwaves across the ground. The only part of the fight I didn't particularly care for was having to make him smash his sword into the stone to advance up his arm, because that wasn't too terribly obvious to me at the time. But once you figure that out, you're in for a hell of a climb to the summit, in what is, without question, the most difficult part of the game by that point. You know, there's a reason Gaius is all over promotional material and fan art for the game. He is everything that's great about Shadow of the Colossus rolled into a single, badass boss fight. Remember how I said Cenobia's boss fight was disappointing because it felt anticlimactic compared to what had come before it? Well, when I said I wanted an endgame boss fight to feel bigger and more grand, this is certainly not what I had in mind. Colossi number 15, Argus, can be summed up in a single word: unintuitive. In a game like Shadow of the Colossus that is big on show don't tell, the path to complete your goal needs to be obvious at a first glance. But one look at Argus doesn't tell you anything about how to beat him. You figure, okay, he's another human-shaped Colossus, so let's just start climbing him like number 1. Nope, doesn't work. Okay, then let's have him hit me and grab onto a sword like number 3. Nope, doesn't work. So from there, you spend another 10 minutes trying things that don't work until you accidentally stumble across the answer. And that theme repeats itself when you have to have him smash the ruins, and again when you have to find his hidden weak point. And no, I refuse to check the wiki. The wiki is for the weak. 40 minutes into this ordeal, and I had never been so happy to see a Colossus die in my entire life. And at number 2, we have Colossus number 5, Avion. So, you're playing the game for the first time, and by now, the shock and awe of fighting giant things has slowly faded away into relative normalcy. I mean, sure, it's still cool, it's still fun, but you haven't really been wowed by anything since that first battle. Then, BAM! Giant fucking bird! The inclusion of flight is a new and interesting mechanic that adds a ton of variety to this battle, and that in turn helps liven up the game as a whole. It's just the right boss battle at just the right place at just the right time. However, let's address the downside of this battle, and in all fairness, it is a pretty major downside. 7.8 out of 10, too much water. And yes, I understand why they need to have all the water. It's to prevent death via fall damage, which, in all fairness, would have been an order of magnitude more frustrating than having to swim back to the platforms every time you fall off, but I refuse to believe we couldn't have compromised here somehow. I don't know, maybe the entire arena is one giant trampoline, just something different. And at number 1 on the bad side, we have Phaedra, the 4th Colossus, and only Colossus that is less intuitive to fight than Argus, to the point, actually, that it can still be difficult even if you walk in already knowing the solution. Now, part of the problem is that it isn't immediately obvious what you have to do, and because Phaedra is a non-hostile Colossus, combined with what I presume to be ADHD, it will quickly and regularly get bored of fighting you in favor of wandering off and looking at all the pretty clouds. So you have to continually fire arrows at it to retain its attention. Then, as it comes over to you, run under the tunnel system, come out the other side, and hide, and wait for it to wonder what happened to the odd monkey man shooting twigs at it. Then it will bend down to search for you, and you can run up behind it and grab onto one of its braids. Issue number 1. How in the living hell are we supposed to figure any of that out by ourselves? Consider for a moment this is only the 4th Colossus in the game, and every other Colossus up until this point has been solved by climbing onto it and stabbing it with our pokey stick. Issue 2. As I said, Phaedra has the attention span of a fly. Just to get it to come over to the tunnels to look at you requires a good 4 or 5 arrows in the eye. So then, why would I assume it would ever care about searching for something that isn't bothering it anymore? Issue 3. Even if you walk into the fight knowing the solution, it can still be a pain in the ass because the animation of Phaedra peering down into the tunnels requires it to be in a very precise location, which it rarely is. And then if you do end up getting onto the damn thing, it'll take you all of a minute or so to beat it by stabbing its one weak point on its head. So it's a frustrating boss with finicky design and infuriating AI. And that's why I'm hoping this boss fight gets made into glue. Maybe get some use out of it. Yeah, everyone knew this one was coming. The 13th Colossus, Phalanx, is my favorite Colossus in the game. So the fight starts with you arriving at a broken shrine with an endless desert stretched out before you. The earth begins to shake, and suddenly, Phalanx breaks out from underneath the ground just feet from where you're standing. The camera pulls back to show you just how truly deserving of the title of Colossus Phalanx is, by far the single biggest in the entire game. And then the fight begins, and unlike Phaedra, it's immediately obvious what you have to do: shoot the giant glowing flotation sacks. And then, in one of the greatest moments in any video game, you have to ride aggro at full speed and then jump off onto one of Phalanx's wings as it passes by. That single moment right there is what makes this boss fight, because in any other game, that would have been a cutscene or a QuickTime event, but in Shadow of the Colossus, that badass action movie stunt was all you. However, as a consequence of the game not just doing it for you, it is very likely you'll screw it up multiple times, but that just makes a successful attempt feel all the more satisfying. It's not even so much a fight really as it is an experience, and that seems to be the banner the entire game is flying under. Something so incredibly unique, it's probably just better to classify it as an experience above all else, and one that people should continue experiencing for decades to come. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching, and by the way, I hope to get that shot of the Colossus 10-2 out in the next 2 weeks or so, and I hope you'll enjoy that. Other than that, this is the part of the video where I yell at you guys to go look at my Facebook and Twitter pages. So, go do that, I guess. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.